If you are joining, there's a link that I put in the webinar chat, which gives a bit of background, not to this specific conversation, but the idea behind this series of conversations. And there's a piece of work that we've been doing at Equal Experts to think about how the world of hybrid working impacts us as an organisation, given that we, like many professional services businesses, are a very relationships-led business. And when people worked exclusively in offices, relationships were built almost by osmosis. And now that we have less time in the same physical space as one another, we've been thinking about, well, what does that mean? How do we go about building relationships? How do we go about finding people that we need to talk to? How do we go about fostering a sense of trust between us, our clients, and the people that we're working with? And quite a lot of the work that's been done around hybrid working so far, I think, has pretty much exclusively focused on intra-organizational stuff. So it's how do you work with the people in your organization? And of course, the work that people like Equal Experts does is all about being able to foster relationships with people in many different places. So the idea behind this brown bag conversation experiment is to be able to have conversations with people who are running usually relatively small businesses that are adjacent to what it is that Equal Experts does, and to be able to talk to people, as we will with Mel in a minute, to find out a bit about what their business does and to understand a bit more about how they help clients. And the aim behind this is twofold. The first aim is to be able to give something that is going to be hopefully interesting, so you can find out about things that are happening in our broader sector, but aren't the things that we ourselves directly do. And then the other aim of this is based on a perception that I have, which is that you can help build relationships by introducing people to one another. It's one of the things that I probably am most valuable for. I've got quite a broad network, having worked in lots of sectors and in a few different professions as well over my career. And being able to make connections between people who might find a use in one another is a really valuable thing to be able to do. So at the end of this conversation, at the end of this series of conversations, what I'm hoping is you'll find something interesting. We'll have some interesting conversations with people who are doing interesting stuff in the broad world of digital transformation, change, technology. And each of you extended your networks by one each time. And that might mean that you'll then spot some time in the future that there's somebody who might need the sorts of services that Mel provides, or some of the other people that we'll be talking to in this series provide. As I say, there's a blog article, there's a blog-in article for EE people, there's a on the internet blog article that I put a link to in the chat. As we go through this, we're going to talk for about half an hour, see how the conversation goes, and then there'll be some time for Q&A. The Q&A feature within Zoom is open, so do drop questions in there. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I'll try to thread questions in if they seem sensible at the time. And then if there's other questions, then we've got some time at the end to be able to do a bit more of a formal Q&A. And Kevin Gray, yes, you are muted. That's possibly a first that Kev Gray has been muted. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the first of our guests into this series of conversations. Mel Ross, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Matt. And I love the idea of being part of an experiment. It's so cool. It's excellent. Pleased to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. It's not in a kind of scary Frankenstein kind of way, hopefully. We're going to talk about your business, what you do, the sorts of services that you offer, the sorts of way in which that helps your clients. I'd like to start off, and these conversations will probably follow a similar sort of structure, just to be able to understand a bit more about you, the founder, to understand a bit more about where you've come from before we talk about what you do, which is to be able to help build the right mindsets in the people, in the clients that you work with to deliver change and transformation. But What's the Mel Ross history? You've started your career working in marketing?
Yeah, I did. I started my career, cricket, a wee while ago now, working in the world of marketing in terms of business marketing and product marketing. And I think it's really interesting, because how did I get into marketing is also an interesting question and pretty relevant to what we might be talking about a little bit later. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to be, where I was going, Matt. That is the truth of it. So I was, oh, I wonder what that looks like. Let's see if I can get in there. And oh, I wonder what that looks like. And that looks rather interesting. I wonder if I can be a part of it. And I was always searching, and very quickly became a change junkie, and very quickly became quite motivated by the future. So change junkie plus future are kind of the two, foundational bricks that have got me to where I am today. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Marketing, product, but I think that sense of where is everything going? I always want to see around the corner. And also, just because I've never been one expert in one particular domain, I've been a little bit of an expert generalist, I guess, is what I'd call myself today. Oh, that's a bit courageous.
Absolutely. And you kind of pivoted from doing product marketing and business marketing into coaching, which I think then helps to sort of tell the story about what it is you do now. How was that a conscious choice, or was that another, I wonder what that's like, kind of experiment?
Possibly it was organic. My degree was in drama and dance, so my family, they're poets, they're musicians, they're human. I've got authors and philosophers, and that's what I grew up in. So I think the human condition has always been something that is very, very, very important to me. So whenever we were looking at product, whenever we were looking at change and transformation, I was always naturally, organically gravitating towards the human impact, the human side of things. That naturally went into leadership, that naturally went into coaching and mentoring, and more recently into that, that whole kind of psychology and neuroscience of what makes us tick.
And from doing coaching, you then to where you are now, which is specifically looking at the concept of mindset, and whether that's a kind of digital mindset or a modern mindset. Before we talk a bit more about how that manifests in how you help your clients, can we just unpack that idea about what on earth is mindset? It's a bit of maybe a buzzwordy term at the moment.
Yeah. And, I think we all struggle with that, don't we? If we're in the world of change and transformation and digital, we're always struggling with jargon and how do we communicate in language that isn't, it isn't too jargony, but equally isn't patronizing to our customers and our colleagues. Mindset, very simply for me, mindset is the culmination of our mental program. So our beliefs, our background, our thought patterns, everything that drives the energy and behavior and actions and words that we use moment by moment in day. That's mindset. And
for a digital mindset, what sort of, what does that mean? How or a modern mindset, how does that help someone in terms of being able to deliver change in an organization?
Oh, that's a loaded gun question, and we've only got less than half an hour now. I think to answer that question, just everybody that's here on the brown bag session today, I wonder if, in some way, shape or form, if you were to think about one of the biggest challenges that you might have with client relationships, with delivering successful change or transformation or a product or, whatever, I wonder whether the answer comes into it's the human. They don't get it, or why can't they see what I see, or it's so obvious to me but it's not obvious to them. How do I motivate them? All of that kind of stuff. And I think when you bring all that together, what you get generically across business, across sectors, across the world, in terms of business, is this, that there's a massive gap. We are so conditioned to think and behave in a particular way based on the old models and the old methodologies and the old frameworks and the old constructs, that we're desperately trying to break out of it. And I think modern mindset, for me, certainly, is an understanding and a loose frame to help people break out of that, and to start to embrace what the future is all about, and to lean into the possibility of change and transformation, rather than to be absolutely scared stiff and all you want to do is run 10 miles in the opposite direction.
It's almost a truism, isn't it, that you can implement all of the technology that you want within an organization or outside of an organization, but until people actually start to adapt how they behave, how they operate, what they do, to actually start to take advantage of it, it's all to naught. So I guess it's being able to unpack and be able to help leaders in organizations understand how to be able to address that human side of it, as well as the lure of the magic technology that will magically solve all their problems for them.
Absolutely. And you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So within each and every one of us is a choice of whether we adopt something, be that a product or change or transformation. And there's something for me, which is I often talk about the iceberg. And so often what we do when we think about the future or transformation, digital transformation, change, what new products, whatever, what we tend to do is we tend to look and gravitate towards what's visible, which is the words and the actions and the behavior, the how people do things in the workplace or in the current state. But what drives how we do things and what we say and do is underneath the water, and that is mindset. And unless we are willing to go underneath and look underneath the hood at why people are saying and behaving and doing what they're doing, historically, and conforming to whatever in the conditions and environment around us, we won't get lasting change. So it might happen for a wee bit, but then people are wondering, gosh, why was everybody on board with this at the start and they were really highly motivated, the Dunning-Kruger curve of change, and and all of a sudden it's like, oh, hang on a minute, this is a bit hard, and trough of disillusionment, and all of a sudden you're thinking, gosh, we delivered the project on time and in budget, but why isn't anybody using the new technology? Well, it's because we haven't really spent the time to look at or address and help shift mindsets. That's what we do.
So there might still be somewhat esoteric for people. Let's try to be able to make it a bit more concrete in terms of thinking about your clients and the sorts of people they are and the sorts of actual activities and services that you deliver to them. So let's start off with the clients. So what are the sorts of organizations that you're working with? Are there particular types? Are you going cross-sector?
We've always said we're cross-sector, so we don't necessarily pigeonhole ourselves into any particular sector or geography, in fact. But we do tend to work mostly, probably about 70% of our customer base is either public sector, health and social care, or highly regulated sectors, like utilities or something, manufacturing or something like that, financial.
And who are the people that you are being commissioned by? Who is it that would say, right, we need Adaptive Digital, we need people like you to come in to be able to help?
It's varied, and we've noticed that trends do change the buyers, the people that come out and seek our work. But if I was to think generically over time who those people are, I think the first group of people is the C-suite. So at that vision and strategic level, we have we really have an ambition to change this organization, to change who we are, to bring, get into new sectors or into new markets? How do we do that? So I think at a vision and a strategic level, there is a senior leader that tends to go out looking and find us. I think within the organization, another group of buyer is the organizational development, design, OD, and learning and development stroke HR group, who are looking for ways to engage managers and leaders, and sometimes the wider workforce, in change and bridge the gap between change, transformation, and learning and development. So it might be, how do we get people to embrace hybrid ways of working? How do we get people to really start engaging with the new technology that is here? How something as simple as Office 365, how many of our customers come to us and say, we've deployed Office 365 in our organization, and there's so many features and functions, but everybody's still using it like another version of Outlook, old email. They're not really. How do we get them to be more curious and explore and experiment? So that's that. And then I guess from that perspective, there is also then the whole kind of change practitioner around project management, change management, technology, sometimes data, not a lot, but people do tend. We've got one customer, the chief data officer, came to us and said, we really need to get people more confident around data. How do we do that in the moments of everyday life? We need to change what's in here. Can you guys help?
And the services that you offer, so tangibly, what does that look like? What are the sorts of offers that you have, and how are you actually engaging with clients to be able to help affect that kind of that change?
So we're engaging with customers on several levels. So on one level, we're engaging with customers at a certification level. So if there are people within the change areas of the organization, they can become certified practitioners in our framework so that they can work from the inside out. They can bring the practices and the tools of our framework into the organization to better support the work that they're doing as a change agent. So certification is one level. The next level is leadership management development. So we have leadership and management public programs, as well as bespoke customized programs that we deliver inside the organization. We tend to try and connect the dots between any change or transformation that's going on with leadership programs. So that's another level. Another level is, which is closely linked to that, which is one-to-one or one-to-few mentoring and coaching programs, so that we deliver a lot of that. And that's also a personal passion of mine, as you know. And then I guess the final level is more on an advisory. I don't really want to say consultative, but more of an advisory role. So we have quite a few customers that we work with as advisors around this, concept of thinking and behaving in a different way that is more closely aligned to where we want to be rather than where we are now. I have this saying that I say to a lot of people, if you want to understand our territory from maybe something that you might be familiar with around change management or improvement, if you think about improvement, a lot of the time what that is let's look at what we've got and let's help people and encourage people to get better, faster and smarter in terms of where they are now. And that kind of works for improvement and continuous improvement. But what that does is, more often than not, it's like, if you've got this is where we are now, then what you've got is you've got lots of different people taking one step in lots of different directions to make who they are now better, faster and smarter. Whereas what we try and do is we try and get everybody directional in one place, which is towards the vision of the future, so that every step that everybody's taking, you got that kind of compound interest. So rather than 10 single steps in different directions, everybody's moving in the same direction. So it's a lot of acceleration, we that's one of the outputs that we get. I had an email from a customer yesterday. It was actually quite funny. Actually, it was a chief officer of a local authority, and she sent me a note and she said, I don't really know what you guys have done. I don't really know how you've done it, but oh my God, there's so much change. The energy's changed. People are just so different in the way that they're approaching our change program. So, yeah.
So that you mentioned there your framework, so that you've got programs of leadership development, learning and development, training, and so on, coaching. But can you just unpack the framework a bit?
Sure. So the framework is an agnostic and dynamic framework. So it's not throw away the baby and the bathwater. So let's get rid of Agile, let's get rid of Prince 2, let's get rid of Lean, or whatever frameworks or methodologies we're already wedded to, or ADCAR and ProSci. It's not about that. What it is, it's about a framework that brings the deep human elements of change and the future alongside some of the things that you're already working with. So it's agnostic. It's called the Dylan Way, and Dylan is the Welsh word for to follow. So, it's very philosophical. So it's not necessarily structural, do this, then do that, then do the other. And once you've done those three things, Fanny's your aunt and Bob's your uncle. It is philosophical. You've got to pick the bits that are relevant to you out of it. But in terms of, I guess, people might be going, well, that's all right, but that's nebulous. Can you give me something a bit more tangible, Mel? Tangible is this. We have 3 tenets. So everything that we do in design, everything that we help people understand and work towards is based on 3 tenets: digitally transforming, humanity and community, and regenerative practice and ethical thinking. So that we've got 3 tenets. Then we have 7 mindsets of modern leadership. And then we have what we call the 5 Ps, foundations of modern business and work, which is everybody as profile, not label, purpose driven in terms of what I'm doing and where I'm going, presence in terms of being able to work in the moment and not be too distracted, prepared, so really understanding that I'm part of the future, and positivity, so a lot of work around positivity. And those kind of the 3 levels of the framework. And then surrounding that, we've got about 150 practice indicators that we can pick and choose depending on customer and size and ambition of the transformation.
So you're able to do a kind of an assessment of a particular client, a particular organisation, to see how their capability for change is today, and then be able to focus and target to particular areas to help them in the specific context of how they're operating.
Yeah, we've got a profiling tool. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes, but it's not an organizational maturity. It's a profiling tool to say, where is your head at the moment? How are you responding to change and the conditions and environment around you? So it's not a psychometric. It's a profiling tool and supported by debriefing and coaching, because you need to unpick, go underneath the hood, go, take a dive in the water and see what's underneath that iceberg.
And if you think about the clients that you have, when you start working with them, what are the sorts of barriers that they have in the way of them delivering change successfully? Are there common, consistent things that you see across organisations that are acting to stop them being able to deliver what they're trying to do?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, absolutely. I think one thing that's common is, I learned a new phrase recently, organisational trauma, which essentially is the limiting beliefs that we carry in the workplace today that are based on the past. So, I might have had a line manager that I worked with 5 years ago that brought in certain processes and ways of working within the team that are still within the team, but the manager left ages ago. But we've hung on to those processes that are informal and become legacy and become habitual. Huge amounts of our work is around unpicking what the habits are within an individual, a team, or an organization, and helping them to release those and build new habits around them. So definitely that sense of limiting belief and baggage, mind baggage, behavioral baggage. I think another one is active participation of leaders. You get, we've designed and created this vision, go forth and multiply. And you've heard me say it in the past, culture shifts by looking up. And there's this massive change program happening, and people are going, okay, so you're talking about all of these things, you're empowering us to do all of these things. And I look up and I see none of that in my manager. I see none of that in the leadership team. Where's the evidence of them? So there's a active participatory leadership is something that we do very often see, and that causes a barrier to change in and of itself. And I guess the other thing as well is hierarchy, and this sense of I can't do that because I'm not at the right level, and equally labels. So not seeing myself as a human being in the workplace, I see myself as the IT manager, or I see myself as a service designer, and this is what I am here to do. Well, actually, it's not about a label, it's about who you are. And I think there's this just lack of seeing people for who they are as a profile rather than as a label, and that's certainly more often than not foundational work that we do to help people to just get rid of that label that you have got on a job description and think more about who you are as a human being, where are your strengths, and build out from there.
Picking up on those first 2 points around the need for role modeling in leaders to be able to make change happen, and then also the hierarchy. I was in a conversation with somebody earlier this week, and one of the things we were talking about was whether the skills and the capabilities you need to have to be able to negotiate your way up the greasy pole of leadership in a hierarchical organization are kind of exactly not the skills you need to be able to demonstrate effective role modeling of change. You actually often need to be quite conservative and quite averse to change in strange ways to be able to climb up the corporate hierarchy. Is that a problem, do you think?
I think it's a reality. I think for me, I would say it's a challenge to be addressed, as opposed to a problem to say we can't do anything about it. I think we can do something about it. I think we do something about that, because really all you're talking about there is an ego, right? Which is, if we can nobody will ever get rid of ego. We've all got an ego. Come on. Who here in this brown bag session is going to say that they are completely devoid of an ego? I've got an ego, you've got an ego. But it's just about dumbing it down a wee bit and just understanding what is the priority. And I think that it's a reality. It's more of a challenge than a problem. When we say that things are a problem, sometimes people can go, oh, put that in a box, got nothing to do with me. Somebody else is going to come along and deal with it. If it's a challenge, what can I do?
That's interesting. We'll be coming out to Q&A in a minute. So if you do have questions for Mel, please drop them into the Q&A section on Zoom. One last question before we get to that. You talked a bit about your client where they said they couldn't quite express how you delivered, but that they were seeing change in terms of being able to get more delivered. What are the sorts of value? I guess actually 2 questions. What are the sorts of value that your clients are looking for when they first commission you? And then what is the value that they actually see delivered? Because sometimes what I think I want to get and what I actually receive but still adds value is different.
That's a really good question. I think there's a lot of idealism when customers first come to us, that there is a silver bullet, or this is a holy grail, that if we put people on this program, or if we get 5 practitioners in, then it's all of a sudden everybody's going to become transformational and everybody's going to be saying, yeah, we're on it. Let's be a part of it. So I do think that people do tend to come with a little bit of a silver bullet kind of mentality. I think what people genuinely get as a result of embracing modern mindset, which takes effort, by the way, right? It's mindset. So let's be clear, is at a human level, there, people talk about well-being a lot. People talk about psychological safety a lot. Well, that kind of stuff, those challenges that a lot of the time have got labels within the organization now, even people that have got, job role specifically on well-being, they tend to naturally just start to organically increase in terms of measures and metrics. So, people are more energized, they are more positive, they are more curious about change. There is increased, sense of taking initiative. And then I guess in terms of, the more hard driven KPIs of business and reporting, there is increased ideation, there is increased productivity, there is speed, of transformation. I would say momentum rather than change. And if anybody on the call now is going to say, "Hey, have you got that documented? Is that have you got a scorecard?" No. This is the world that we live in, the world of mindset, the world of neuroscience. It's still pretty emergent. It's still pretty nascent. I mean, one challenge we do have is who owns us? Who owns us in the organization? No, we have a lot of customers that don't know who own us, and therefore who's going to own the budget of the work that we do. So we get that a lot as well, Matt. So the stories and the anecdotes that we capture through our organizational work is really where we see the shift.
Thank you. Right, a question from Michael. Thank you, Michael. How do you go about quickly building trust? So I guess an interesting as a consultant building trust, because you're touching on some fairly potentially emotive subjects, I guess, with clients. So how do you go about building trust?
There is a loaded gun word in that sentence that Michael's asked, which is quickly. So take the word quickly out and there's an answer, put the word quickly in, it's a different answer. I think, I talked about those 5 P's earlier on: profile, purpose, presence, prepared, and positivity. Presence and purpose. If you have done some work on your own why and understand why you're there and what you're contributing in your value, as I have done, my value, my worth, my contribution, then I think that's really important, because what that does is it means that you can be more honest, you can be more authentic, and even show vulnerability. And people sense it. People can sense that. So for me, I think building trust is that already before I am in conversation with a customer, I know who I am, I know what we do, I know, our why and our purpose for being and doing. And I think that's really important. Of course, being able to share stories is, it builds trust because it gives credibility and it shows reputation. That's another trust builder, as well as the sense of authenticity that you bring. And I think there's something about, I'm getting a bit woo-woo here, but it's important. Faith and belief. If you've got those foundational elements, then I bring faith and belief into a conversation. The likelihood is that will transfer over to the person or the people that I'm speaking to, and I think that's super important as well. Quickly, if I was to add quickly into that, what I would say is, whenever we're building trust, it's not about how can we build trust en masse. It's about how do we find the people that are closest to the way that we think now, in order for us to get to that tipping point, and then we can, we're at a point where we could potentially shift a project or a program into what I call a people movement. So I think, building trust quickly has got a lot to do with being with, engaging the right people, finding the right people, engaging the right people, and wrapping your arm around them in order to then kind of, follow that the law of diffusion of change, that bell curve that we've seen so many times.
Thank you. If there are any more questions, there is another question again from it's a comment from Michael, which says thanks. He said quickly I felt was important to add, but a great answer. So thank you, Michael. Yeah. So we're coming to the end of the time. Where can people go if they want to find out more about what you do and about the Dillon Way framework?
They can come directly to me. So mel.ross@adapt2digital.com. I think maybe our emails have been shared with people anyway. So
they will be, I think, next week.
Yeah. So and that's another thing as well. Go to this infographic, go to this place. Come talk to me directly. I'm here. I'm a human being. I would love to talk, and I think that's something really important. And more than happy to share. We do have a website, which is it's pretty much a brochure site, so you can learn more at adapt2digital.com. Same as the email address, and LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. We do also have a community. We have a community which is called leadin4d.com. It is free to join, but you do have to join it because it is a closed community. But you can come in for free. And in there, we have just got lots of people all over the world that want to learn a little bit more about, what's underneath that iceberg of the human to support more accelerated change and transformation. And some good people in there. So there's another place that you can connect with me as well.
Brilliant. We'll share links to that when the summary, I think an email will go out early next week, and some summary of this and a link to the recording as well. So we'll share those details then. Mel, thank you for joining me today. Much appreciated. Thank you for being the first in this experiment, the guinea pig of guinea pigs. Coming up, the next one of these, I think, is going to be in a few weeks' time in March. We've got 2 more guests lined up, and then at the end of that, we'll see what reaction is to this. Next guest is a guy called Tom Geraghty. Tom is a former CTO and former DevOps specialist. He, up until recently, was working for Red Hat. He has now created a business which is working with clients to help, picking up on the theme that you mentioned briefly there, Mel, developing psychological safety and helping his clients to be able to develop psychological safety. He's working with tech teams and the teams outside of the technology field as well. And then a little later in March, we're going to be joined by Olivia Gambolin, who runs a business called Ethical Intelligence. And her business creates ethical decision frameworks for her clients so that they can assess the ethical impact of making investments into AI and data and that kind of sort of area of technology. So those should be both interesting conversations as well. Thank you for joining us. If you've joined us live, thank you for watching. If you have watched the recording. And Mel, once again, thank you very much for joining today.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me. Really enjoyed it. And thanks to everybody. Really enjoyed it. Brown bag, guinea pig, experiment. Nice.
Thanks, everyone.